Next up is Jimmy Song of Fiat Ruins Everything. Welcome to the stage, everybody.
All right, good to see everyone here at 8:30 in the morning. I know many of you were out pretty late last night. I appreciate you guys coming here so early and doing all of that. I guess I should stand in the middle so you can see the presentation. Anyway, it's good to be here in Vietnam. I know this part of the world doesn't get that much attention from Bitcoiners. You have places like El Salvador and, you know, obviously the United States, even Latin America and Europe and stuff like that. I'm glad that this is coming here because this is where Bitcoin adoption, I think, can really take off and really sort of put a dent into the fiat system. And that's what this presentation is all about. It's about fiat money and how it ruins everything. I'm going to tell you right now that this is the title for the next book that I'm writing. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, it's going to be in that book. But that's the thesis, is that fiat ruins everything. It ruins a lot more stuff than you think, and it is completely pervasive. So let's talk about fiat money. The ostensible things that most people understand about fiat money is that it does add a lot of cronyism, right? When there's a money printer, somebody can get more of it by, you know, cozying up to the authorities. And we see a lot of this, and it's obvious that this is very unjust. This is very unfair. We also see a lot of corruption as a result. You make things that are completely unnecessary. You build things that are unnecessary. And of course, you get a lot of Cantillon effects. This is why there are people that are much richer than other people without adding very much value. It's fine if you are like Thomas Edison or somebody and you invent a lot of stuff. You deserve to be rich if you make a lot of different things that are useful to people. But if you're an investment banker, is that like something's a little off about that? And I know most of you have felt this, that the world is unjust in some way and that something is off about everything. I'm here to tell you that fiat money is the reason. And just sort of as a preview of the rest of the presentation, it really is all about politics. And it's very easy to see that a lot of the people that do make a lot of money, that are successful in a fiat money economy, they're all very, very political. And this is, you know, this is everyone from actual politicians like Nancy Pelosi, who is somehow the greatest stock trader ever, to, you know, other people like CEOs of companies. They're very political animals, right? Like they have this sort of side to them. And that's something that we're going to hit on over and over again. But at the core of why fiat ruins everything are because of this. It's incentives. You have certain incentives because of fiat money. In particular, you get big distortions of prices because there's an extra buyer in the market. You have the government who can spend more money than they receive, and they distort prices because whatever they pay for, you know, they'll get more of. So, for example, in the US, you get a lot of defense spending. So defense contractors make a lot more money, even though they're not really providing any goods and services to the economy. They're just building up weapons, many of which don't even work, but they get subsidized by the government. You get decreased quality for subsidized products. So, for example, we have like college education, which is subsidized through fiat loans. And that causes college education to come down. You know, I think I read that at Harvard right now, there are no classes on the Renaissance, right? One of the greatest periods of history. There are 0 classes on that. Instead, it's been replaced with you know, critical race theory classes or something like that. You're no longer getting the same quality that you used to, say, 50 years ago. And most importantly, you get lots of rent-seeking opportunities. Now, if you don't know what rent-seeking is, it's this idea that You sit in the middle of a transaction and you collect the tax without it, providing any value. Of course, government is a big rent seeker, but there are a lot of people that get to participate in rent-seeking opportunities as a result of fiat money. And that is a giant problem because they don't contribute anything to society, and yet they are able to extract value from all the productive activity that's actually going on. And of course, rent seeking is much easier than providing a good or service to the market that the market wants. And as a result of that, you get a lot more rent seeking. This is the main incentive that distorts the economy as a result of fiat money. So here's an example. This is a graph of the growth of physicians and administrators from 1970 to 2009. And so this is like 14 years old, right? But you can see that 1971, right, we cut ties to gold, and you can see that the number of physicians is in brown, hasn't increased very much. But look at the graph of the administrators. Now, what are administrators? These are bureaucrats. These are paper pushers. These are people that don't really add anything. They're often compliance personnel. They're trying to fulfill some government mandate of some kind. That is going up and to the right, and I guarantee you it's gotten worse in the last 14 years. And it's not just healthcare. Healthcare is something that, at least in the US, the government meddles in quite a bit. I mean, you can see the same graph in universities as well, where professors are like that brown part of that graph, and administrators go up like crazy. This is endemic in almost every industry, where you get way more administrators, way more bureaucrats, way more paper pushers, way more people that don't really add anything, rather than people that are actually doing stuff, that are providing value. Clearly, doctors provide value, but the insurance settlement claims officer that's upstairs in the hospital administration building, what are they really adding, right? And this is what fiat money does, is it makes that part of the economy grow like a cancer. And again, this is all politics. It's all politics. These people want to be in those jobs because it's a lot easier than being like a doctor or a professor or something like that. It's a lot easier to be an administrator. A few years ago, I went back to my old university, University of Michigan, and I saw this beautiful building, right? Like that was on campus, that was brand new. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really nice building. What building is that? I saw the title. It said, Law School Administration Building. Law School Administration Building. They built an entire beautiful building just for bureaucrats. They don't hold any classes there. It's not even used as a cafeteria. It's just for all of the bureaucrats. That's how much this complex has grown, that you build an entire building on campus just for those people, right? That's crazy. But this is what fiat money does. When you have all of this extra money, well, it gets spent on people that aren't providing any value. And we can all sense that it's really unfair, right? Like this rent seeking, all of the busybodies, all of the people that aren't adding value, they're somehow getting a lot of money. And the poster boy for this is this guy. Who is this guy? For those of you that don't know, this is Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden. He is the son of the President of the United States, Joe Biden. He has no discernible skills whatsoever. In fact, what he's best known for is snorting coke and hiring hookers. That's what he does. He has no discernible skills whatsoever. Yet, he makes lots and lots of money, right? He was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. No discernible skills. Why is he getting this position? It's because he is the son of the President of the United States. He has no discernible skills. All he has is access to the President. That is what rent-seeking looks like, and that's how unfair it is. And rent-seeking has a lot of second order effects. It drains a lot of talent. Think about where the best and the brightest people of the last 50 years have been going. The best and the brightest, the people from the best universities in the world, where have they been going? Investment banking. Do you think that's adding anything? These are people like 100 years ago that would have been out purchasing an oil field, trying to figure out how to get all of the oil out of it, or building railroads or something like that. Instead, they are manipulating bits on a computer to get like a tiny fraction of a margin on a trade or something like that. It's draining talent. And it makes those people the biggest leeches. Instead of producing something for society, they are now draining resources from society. And it becomes kind of like a cheat code for civilization. And I mean that in sort of the most basic way. If you've ever played a video game and gotten a cheat code for it, I used to do this when I was younger, play SimCity, and it's it's very frustrating because you don't have enough money to build everything you want. So I figured out how to change the save game file to add $1 billion to my budget, and then everything would be easy. It's kind of like that. And you all know that if you play a video game that way, it sucks. It's not very satisfying because it's way too easy. And in a sense, that's what all of these rent seekers go through. They know deep down that they didn't deserve this money. This is why, when you see people on Wall Street, they're all on drugs. They have to calm their, inner conscience in some way. And civilization is what gets screwed as a result. Fiat money ruins merit because of this opportunity for rent seeking. When you can rent seek and do something that's not adding value to other people, instead of, instead you can just get money through politics, it ruins civilization. So here's exactly how it works. How much money you make is not based on the value you provide to other people. It's based on how politically connected you are. So if you're Hunter Biden, you can be a complete degenerate and still make lots of money. But if you are, somebody that is honestly trying to make money, you get taxed to hell. And you also get a lot of gatekeeping because honestly, everyone wants to be the investment banker. Who doesn't want to make $300 million, pushing a few buttons or whatever? But that means that there's also a lot of gatekeeping. It becomes very, very much more difficult to get into those positions. And that means that to get into those positions requires either extraordinary luck or a lot of personal political connections. And we're seeing this over and over again. If you're Hollywood royalty, it's very easy to get into that industry. But if you're, some hodunk from Iowa or something like that and you go to Hollywood, good luck trying to make it. Probably not going to, no matter how talented you are. But once you're in, it's completely a political game. And if you play your cards right with politics, well, then you might be very successful, no matter how bad you are at the actual value providing. And that increased gatekeeping, we can see it in some industries. I already mentioned investment banking and Hollywood, but there's also stuff like modern art, right? There's unions, and obviously being a politician itself, it becomes very much more difficult. It's not about the quality of your ideas, it's often your last name. So if you have a last name like Clinton or Bush, it's much easier to get into politics and much faster. It's all rent-seeking. And it's no surprise that all of these are trending older, right? Like, think about, who's in all of these. Like, how many movies has Tom Cruise made, right? Like, he's been around for, 40 years or something like that? And, modern art, like, you're not going to give up your position as an artist because you don't have to prove anything anymore. Once you're in, you're in. And you get a lot of top-down mandates it becomes all very centralized. You have sort of like cultural tastemakers, right? You have people that say, this is what provides value, therefore we're going to get more of this. And the truth is this, right? And it's like very gaslighting, because the authorities get to tell you what the truth is. And many of us in this industry were just kind of like, really? That you're telling us that this is what happened when clearly the evidence is not that way? Now, I'm not going to mention any specifics, but I think you guys can get the drift on some of that stuff. All right, so I want to give you like sort of like a visual illustration of what I'm talking about. This is La Pietà, and I got to see it in Rome. This is at St. Peter's, one of the most beautiful sculptures in the world. Michelangelo actually created this in his early 20s, and it was, it was considered then, as it is now, one of the most beautiful pieces of art ever created. Interestingly enough, this is the only piece of art that Michelangelo made that he signed. And you can kind of see it right there. You can see that he signed it on Mary's sash on that on the sculpture. The story behind this signature is very interesting because it wasn't there originally. He signed it afterwards when he overheard a couple of people discussing his sculpture. They were saying, oh, it's from this other artist or something like that. And he kind of got angry, and that night he went and carved his name along Mary's sash. He never signed another piece of art ever again, and he always regretted signing this thing. Now, why? The reason why is because he wanted the art to speak for itself. He wanted the art to be beautiful on its own without anyone knowing that it was he that carved it. And if you ever go to Rome, if you go to any of these churches, you'll see a lot of statues, and not a single one of them is signed. Why? Because the art speaks for itself. Now, I want to compare this to this piece of art. This is a Picasso. And the only reason, I would submit to you that the only reason this is valuable is because of the signature. You can see his signature, Picasso, on the right. That's the only reason it's valuable. And this is ultimately what the difference between fiat and merit. If it's based on merit, the work, the beauty, the value is obvious. If it's fiat, it has to be, the value has to be given by some centralized authority. So we've been told all our lives that Picasso was this amazing artist that did all of this stuff. I think this looks like crap. I think this is like I wouldn't hang this for free at my house. Like I think my 5-year-old can make something better. But we're told that this is the greatest thing ever because Picasso was at the top of that political hierarchy, right? He could sign anything. He could sneeze into a piece of paper and sign his name, and somebody would buy it for a lot of money. Why? Because his signature is on it. And this is the big difference. This is the difference between proof of work and proof of stake. You're only paying for that signature. The only reason why your 5-year-old's painting is not worth millions of dollars like this Picasso is because your 5-year-old is not at the top of the Cantillon status hierarchy. They're not elite approved. They're not being promoted by museum curators. A Michelangelo, the La Pietà, it would be worth money in any era because it is beautiful, because there's actual work that went into it. Picasso used to make like 50 paintings a day. He could because it didn't matter what he painted. It was only his signature that mattered. And that's the big difference between fiat and merit. Now, here's some examples of some fiat companies. I already mentioned defense contractors, but car manufacturers have become fiat companies. Airlines, utilities, banks, these have all essentially been captured by the fiat economy. And you can see that there's essentially no innovation coming out of any of these. And again, this is because of politics. It's in their interest to keep things the same. By not changing, they can keep their positions. And this is the critical part of any fiat economy, is that everyone that's in these rent-seeking positions, it's in their interest to keep things the same because they keep getting paid. Instead of trying to satisfy the market's demands in a better way, they just play politics, mandated so that our position is solidified and no one else can come in and disrupt us. That's essentially what a lot of those industries have done. And they've ruined merit because rent seekers thrive. And you get zombification. Zombification. A lot of these companies are no longer providing much value, and so they get subsidized. And once you get subsidized by the government, say goodbye to any innovation. You get stagnation, you get the regression of civilization. Not just staying the same, you go backwards. You also have wars of destruction, which set things further back, but this is what I'm talking about when I say that we're going backwards in civilization. This is the Concorde. It was a plane that took you from New York to London in about 3 hours. It stopped running in 2004. What happened? They went backward. We went backwards. Why aren't we doing airline flights that are much faster? It's because the current airline companies like where they are. There's no incentive to innovate. There are really only 2 commercial airline manufacturers in the world right now. It's Boeing and Airbus, that's it. Who else is coming in? The regulatory hurdles are enormous. The capital investment is enormous. No one's gonna go do that. There are lots of promising technologies that could probably displace this, like drones and stuff like that that can carry people, but no one's gonna do it. Too many regulations, too much fiat politics. And that's why stuff like this goes away. Here's another example. Dishwashers. I don't know how many of you have one, but you run one, how long does it take? Like 3 hours? At least that is for me. It takes 3 hours to run a cycle for a dishwasher. Would it surprise you to learn that about 50 years ago, it wasn't the case? It used to take 45 minutes. It would get your dishwasher, like all your dishes sparkling clean 50 years ago. What happened? Why does it take 3 hours now? Well, they don't like competition, so they limit the amount, by regulation, they limit the amount of water that you're allowed to use. And the cleaning agents that you're allowed to use also have changed. So we've gone backwards. We've gone backwards. Think about how many movies there have been of Spider-Man, right? Like they just keep making the same thing over and over. There hasn't been any innovation in art for a while. When's the last time you saw a movie that really made you think? There are lots and lots of fiat industries, and they don't want competition. They want things to stay the same, and they secretly like the regulation and compliance costs because it keeps out competition. They can stick with their position. This is the incentive of the rent seeker. And they have zero reason to innovate. I mean, maybe they can eke out an extra % or 2 here and there. But mostly, they just want to keep doing what they're doing. And they get to keep their positions by default. This obviously is a picture of Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. I would submit to you that this was probably the peak of fiat civilization. So what have we done since then? What have we done since then? We have social media companies, We have more financial games. Have we really pushed the frontier in any way since then? The interesting thing is we haven't been back. Right? They were thinking, okay, we're gonna make moon bases and have trips to Mars and create things there. We haven't pushed the envelope at all. It just stopped. I think the last time a man landed on the moon was like 1972. We've gone backwards, and it's because of fiat money. And this desire to keep everything the same is an entitlement mindset. And it's this idea that if we have enough political will, we can just keep everything the same exactly forevermore. And it's profoundly conservative. It's conservative in a very different way than we think of as conservatism. It's just keep my position, I don't want anything to change. As long as I'm okay, who cares about the future? It's a very high time preference conservatism. And it's really theft, right? It's taking stuff from other people so you can stay in your position. This is the culture war. This is the political war. This is what fiat money ends up making people do. Thankfully, we have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin fixes this. And altcoins don't fix anything. Altcoins don't fix anything because it is Fiat 2.0. It is doing everything that fiat money does, but at another scale. You have the same types of incentives. You ruin merit. Think about all the quote-unquote developers on our altcoin ecosystem. Vast majority of them don't create anything of value. They get grants from Tron or something, and then they make some BS product, and they get paid. That's exactly what a rent seeker does. They incentivize more rent seeking. And a lot of people complain about being in Bitcoin. Oh, there just aren't as many jobs and they're harder. Yeah. It's because there's no rent seeking in Bitcoin. Right? You can rent seek in altcoins all the time, right? You go to some company that raised a ton of money in an ICO. Yeah, you could make a lot of money. Is that where you really want to be? So you're not providing any value. You're just sucking value from all the people that have bought the token. Bitcoin, there's none of that. It's all proof of work. You have to do the work. But this is also what makes it more exciting because this is where merit gets rewarded. And if you succeed in Bitcoin, you're actually adding value. Whereas succeed in altcoin, you're probably a rent seeker. I want to sort of end with the story of the hat. A lot of people ask me, okay, why do you wear this hat? Like, what's going on? And I want to tell you that I wear the hat for 3 reasons. The first is because I'm from Texas. I live in Austin, Texas. And if you know anything about Texans, it's that we want you to know that we're from Texas. Right? That's part of our ethic. And you can see the belt, the boots, and the hat. It's to let people know I'm from Texas, I'm for liberty. The second reason is because I am in this industry, and it's a lot like the Wild West. There's a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of danger. And it's a reminder, watch out for the dangers. The third reason is because I love that 1800s era. And if you think about the United States in the 1800s, at the beginning of the century, it was a former backwater British colony. At the end of the century, it was a world superpower. So what happened in those 100 years? Well, they pushed the frontier. They pushed the frontier. And there's a saying from the Old West, from that era. It was, go west, young man. Go west, young man. And what did they mean by that? Go west, young man. It's this idea that most of the population was on the East Coast, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Washington, D.C. And if you grew up in those areas, you would find that there were already a lot of people doing what you were doing. So if you were a baker, a cobbler, an accountant, there was already a lot of competition. So they would tell you, as soon as you came of age, go west, young man. don't compete here with all of the people that are already here and they already have their clients or whatever. Go to the new fertile ground, go to the frontier. Because at the frontier, there weren't as many bakers or cobblers or accountants. You can go and do those things there and it would be much better. You would have much more opportunity. You could blaze your own trail. And they would. And that's how the West was won. That's how the United States became a superpower, because they expanded all the way out west from sea to shining sea. And that's what this hat is all about, because Bitcoin is our frontier. You can actually push against something. If you're an accountant, you can either compete against all of the traditional accountants, at a big 5 firm and try to, climb up the ladder and become, I don't know, at some point, chief accounting officer at some company. That'll probably take you 40 years. Or you can figure out what this community wants and figure out how to do Bitcoin accounting and push the frontier. And this is true for every job that you might have. The hat is a way to remind you that there's opportunity here, and you can blaze your own trail. You don't have to wait 40 years to get into the right positions. And this is something that I'm grateful for, because I'm a coder, right? How'd I end up here? Why am I on stage talking to you guys? It's because of Bitcoin. I wasn't going to be Linus Torvalds. I came into this thing and realized that there was a gap and there was opportunity. And many of the speakers that you'll hear from today, they did the same thing. There is opportunity for you here, because this is the frontier. And that's how we fix things. And here's the mindset that you need to have, which is provide value, because ultimately that's what will get you the reputation you need. Keep progressing, right? Push the frontier, make something new, and do a good job. Be better than everybody else. Do something good instead of thinking that you're entitled to something. And that's my message, is that ultimately, this is what will get you to the place where we progress civilization, because this is the truth. It's that you can't progress civilization through rent-seeking. It's through actually providing value, creating things, creating new things. And we are that intransigent minority, because while the rest of the culture, the rest of the world, goes towards a deterioration, in many ways like Rome, we're the intransigent minority that's pulling everything back. I'm reminded of a war here that was here 50 years ago. It was an intransigent minority that won over a much more well-funded enemy. And I want you to think about that as we move on in this journey. Thank you very much. All right, we have about 11 minutes, so we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. So any questions or whatever, please. I think Malcolm's got a mic, so yeah.
I'll kick things off, I guess, in terms of my first question, Jimmy, would be on the hat. Has it been the same hat since you began your Bitcoin journey, or do you have multiple hats, or do you change hats based on where Bitcoin is at the moment?
Well, so I do have multiple hats, and this hat is kind of nasty right now because I've been wearing it for like the last 7 months. And if you know anything about hats, it's very hard to clean, right? And I've worn it in the rain and stuff. So this one's a little nasty, which is why I asked on Nostr to have somebody buy me one. Unfortunately, that didn't work out because it didn't arrive in time. I do have multiple hats. The main thing to know about my hat is that I wear a white one when I'm trying to inspire people, and I wear a black one when I'm debating somebody or saying bad things about somebody else's project. So, yeah, white hat. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? You have 10 minutes. You have get to ask Jimmy whatever you want here. Now's your time. Here we go.
Hello, great talk, very inspiring. How big is the Bitcoin frontier? So if you take this analogy from the United States, right? At some point the continent was full and the West Coast was economically as productive as the East Coast, right? Mm-hmm. They were maxing out. So how big is that frontier in Bitcoin and when are we going to reach the end of it?
Well, from an economics perspective, I think the frontier is enormous. So all of the sort of store of value substitutes that we have now, stuff like real estate, bonds, all of that, that's, I think, all conquerable by Bitcoin, right? And we have a very, very tiny percent of a percent that's in Bitcoin right now. I think that grows and conquers all of this other stuff. So we have a giant real estate premium. It's way more than the utility that you get out of it through living in it and so on. That's largely because of fiat money. It doesn't hold its value well, so people invest in real estate instead. Especially in Asia, that tends to be something culturally sort of reinforced as well. I think Bitcoin can and will conquer those. So that's a pretty large frontier, at least in my mind, of conquering that. There's also payment systems. A lot of them are centralized. And if you study any sort of hyperinflation, what you find is that a lot of payment systems based on credit go down. So I was in Beirut a couple months ago, and they have Uber there. Uber used to take credit card. They don't anymore. You have to pay the driver in cash. Why? Because the electronic payment system of credit cards uses credit. And if you delay for 45 days payment on a hyperinflating economy like Lebanon, it's not going to work. So you have to pay cash. So there's also opportunity in that method of payment one, which I think is beyond the store of value. And of course, finally, it's taking over, the fiat money in general. It's a unit of account for global trade. I think that's a frontier that will eventually come to pass. That's probably the other side of the sea. But we're now like a sliver on the East Coast. This is the 13 colonies era still. And there's a lot more to conquer, financially speaking.
Anybody else? I'll follow up, Jimmy. I'll follow up with another question. So in terms of the frontier, you spoke about the frontier. So if one were to go even more westward, mm-hmm. is that Lightning? Is it Nostra? What's on the cutting edge of the frontier now? And then moving forward, what is even more westward than we are today?
Yeah, I think honestly, taking over gold is right at the frontier right now, and gold market cap versus Bitcoin market cap's like a pretty decent measure there. Obviously, something like Lightning for the global south as a method of payment in places where you don't have credit cards and stuff like that. That's a major one. So you can go to, this is one of the things that I realized when I went to El Salvador, is if you go to El Salvador and try to use a credit card in the countryside or something like that, they can't, right? They don't, Visa and MasterCard aren't going into there and setting up their networks. It's not profitable for them. So you have to use cash, and they don't have fancy POS systems. They write down everything on a piece of paper. So for them, something like Lightning, some other methods of payment, it's a giant improvement. It's a huge quality of life improvement. Imagine trying to pay your mortgage with cash by walking to your bank every month, right? That would be extremely annoying. And this is why you don't have mortgages in El Salvador. But once you have a quick payment method that's not credit-based, yeah, it becomes like a significant innovation. So that's probably a further one. And then, you know, way far down the line is replacing national currencies and, you know, going on a sound money standard. And all of those are going to take time. But those are where the frontiers are now, and that's where the opportunity is. So I encourage you to go and explore those based on your particular skill sets and marry them with Bitcoin network and see where you can add value.
Thank you. Any last questions? Okay, we got somebody in the front here. Let me run up. There you go.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks for your talk. I'm curious, since you mentioned, I mean, we're at Lightningcon, but since you mentioned Michelangelo and Picasso and his inscription and signature there, I'm wondering about your current thoughts about ordinals and the inscriptions part on Bitcoin.
Yeah, ordinals are a little bit of a controversial topic. Let me just say it right now. It's stupid, and I think it's completely worthless. But if they want to do it, they can, and they've wasted a bunch of money doing it. I think it has almost no chance of lasting beyond like a short fad, kind of like CryptoKitties was or whatever, and it'll die down. Probably get resurrected like a few years later. Oh, look at this new thing, something like that. You know, these things like kind of come and go, and there's always something like this. It's not the first time we had like NFTs of some kind. I don't know if you remember back in, I think it was like 2015 or something like that. You had rare Pepes, right, which were on Counterparty, which was built on top of Bitcoin and stuff. So this is nothing new. I did color coins back in 2013. And we had the ability to do NFTs then. I was like, oh, yeah, you could do this. Then I realized very quickly that it was going to be completely centralized, which all of these things are. You know, it's by convention, right? Like there's no real thing underneath that you're getting rights to. It's just somebody decided to stuff a block with a bunch of bits, and we're now saying that this is worth something. Yeah, I mean, this is the epitome of you know, fiat art or whatever. It's based on cultural tastemakers deciding for you what is valuable and what is not, instead of you yourself saying, okay, this is actually useful for me. How many people are going around saying, okay, you know, I really have this business problem. You know, I need. You know, I really wish I can solve this. You know what's going to be the solution? Ordinals. Yeah, no one is saying that. There's 0 people saying that. So that should tell you that how useful this stuff is and how this is based on marketing, politics, all of the fiat stuff that I just talked about. And this is why I think it'll just sort of sputter, because there's no force of violence or getting canceled or something like that, no threats against your livelihood to enforce the adoption of this stuff. Yeah,
Great, thank you. We got a hand up here, and then we'll go here next.
Hey, if we look at geographical frontiers, Bitcoin frontiers around the world, Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, what are technologies in Bitcoin and trends you're seeing in different regions?
Well, it's hard to answer because the way people use it tends to be very driven by the technologies that are available to them. So, you know, in Africa, a lot of the cell phones don't have internet access, but they do have like access to something like M-Pesa or something. In which case, you know, like having bridges between those matters. Like from a lot of different people use it for different things. The main thing right now is most people use the dollar as their store of value in the global south. So you go to any of these countries and they want dollars because their own currency is inflating. So I think the trigger moment, or the moment that we need to prepare for as a community, is when people start realizing that the US dollar isn't holding its value either. They're going to want something else. And that's the moment that we got to prepare for, make sure that they actually have self-sovereignty over their own money. They can store it securely, either on their phone or a hardware wallet or something like that, not get hacked. That's the moment I think will come probably sooner than you think. Not in 90 days, but probably will in the next few years.
Awesome, thank you. And there's a question here.
Thanks for excellent speech. And this is not also easy question, I think. Of course, nobody knows about when and how the transition from Fiat standard to Bitcoin standard. But what's your opinion or insight on how, what aspect on it may we see and meet?
Yeah, everyone wants to know when we're going to be on Bitcoin. Yeah, it's hard for me to say. What I will point out is that I think it's the global south that adopts it first. The people that are high on the Cantillon hierarchy, like the investment bankers, the politicians, and people like that, that are benefiting from the current system, they're going to be the last ones to adopt it. This is why Warren Buffett calls it a rat poison. Right? This is a guy that hasn't made anything in his life, yet he's like highly revered and respected because he knows how to move money around in a fiat system. Right? Those are the people that are going to be absolutely last. The people that are lower on the hierarchy, the young people that can't get jobs, the global south that can't get access to different things and are under the thumb of the IMF or the World Bank or the Bank of International Settlements or the WEF or whatever, those are the people that are going to adopt it first. So I suspect that we'll see it in places like El Salvador or Vietnam or wherever first, sort of like gaining momentum in those places before it really comes to more of the Western countries and the places that have benefited from US largesse. So yeah, that's what I suspect, but who knows? I could definitely be wrong on that, and I would suggest you go and see what people are doing on the ground in these places.
Awesome, thank you. Time for one last question. Okay, over here. There you go.
Hi, Jimmy. I think a lot about Bitcoin scaling. What do you think the next hard limit of Bitcoin scaling is? It's block space is finite. It's not possible for all 7 or 8 billion people in the world to have a UTXO. Where do you think the next wall is, and how do we get past it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I know it's probably not going to be a popular answer, but I suspect that there's going to be like sort of centralized substitutes for like layer 2s that are probably going to be popular first. And you kind of see that, I mean, exchanges are basically that, where you have millions of accounts on a single exchange and they have maybe like 30 UTXOs worth billions of dollars, and all of those people own it or whatever. So that sort of thing will happen, but then they'll probably be tempted towards fractional reserve banking of some kind and rehypothecating and screw a bunch of people when they go bust, which happens every once in a while. That's for people to learn. Lightning, I think, can definitely help with that. But there are other sort of layer 2 solutions that are centralized but less risky. Fediments, stuff like that, which I suspect will become more popular because you get a lot of good trade-offs for the centralization, like privacy, instant settlement, stuff like that. So yeah, the next limit is like 1 million daily users, something like that, is probably when we're going to see some innovation. But this is fertile ground for entrepreneurs, right? If you can find a solution at those levels, there's a lot of money in it for you. And this is the frontier that I'm talking about. It's the equivalent of, people building roads or something like that out in the West. There's plenty of of opportunity, and it requires people like you.
Awesome, thank you. And just with your last 30 seconds, should we expect anything else in 2023? Is there a new book coming out? Where else are you going to be speaking this year? I'm sure people would love to hear about that news, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, so I am writing a book, Fiat Ruins Everything, and that will come out sometime in September, and I'll publish it with Bitcoin Magazine Press. And I will be speaking at a few other conferences. Right now I'm committed for at least 2. There's BitBlock Boom in Austin in August, and Unconfiscatable in Las Vegas in December. I will probably be doing some others in between then. I just, I haven't finalized my schedule yet. So there you go.
Awesome, thank you very much. Thank you.